Now that brings a whole new meaning to Red Heart yarns.
Hello crafties, welcome to another video. My name is Infiniti and today we are going to be making a special project in light of Valentine's Day, which will be coming up pretty soon. So I figured you guys might want to get cracking on some like nice little presents or whatever for that. So for today's tutorial we are making an afghan that I designed a couple years back during a commission. It's kind of on the spot, but I liked it so much that I've done a couple more patterns like that. So it's called the My Heart Will Go On, a blanket. And if you guys haven't noticed by now, I like making puns out of my titles. So there's one thing. As you saw in the preview before, I used I think it was called banana berry print, and I used white for the heart on the inside, but it is an intarsia design. So that's just meaning you're going to create a design that is embedded within your crochet work. So for today's tutorial, you are going to need some yarn of any colors, like I said, because it is close to Valentine's Day. I'm doing it in the love theme. You're going to need a color A and a color B. Now, your color A, you're going to want 3 to 4 regular skeins. Of course, Red Heart Super Saver is my go-to, but whatever yarn that you want to use, that is fine. It will also work for this tutorial. Just know that you might have to work more or less rows depending on the weight of the yarn. So Red Heart is a 4-weight yarn, so that's why I recommend maybe 3 to 4 depending on how big the blanket is. The one in the preview was only about 80 chains plus 1 or 2, something like that. Odd numbers. So yeah, 3 to 4 of color A, and then you're going to want like 2 to 3 color Bs. I do have more red, but it is way up there. So I'll be grabbing that as I need it. You're going to want stitch markers. I have mine in my little bowl. And you are going to want your regular tools, so it's your snips, your sewing or darning needle, and I think that's about it. Oh, well, crochet hook. How could I forget that? Crochet hook. Now I'm going to be using this 5mm. You are more than welcome to use a 5.5mm. That is the gauge for the yarn. It works either way. I've worked it even with a 4.5mm. It was a thinner yarn. So just depending on the yarn you're using, that will determine the hook that you're going to use. Today I feel like using a 5mm. So without further ado, we're going to get started. Alright, so now like I said, this pattern is a pattern that I wrote up 2 years ago. I'm seeing the date on it and I'm like, wow. The first one I made was like a king-sized one. It was ginormous, hard to do. But this one, I promise you today, will be easy. I am going to not make a ginormous version. So the basics of this pattern is you want an odd number of stitches so that you can easily work the patterning into your blanket. And so for that, today I'm going to have us to do chains in increments of 20. You can do this in any increment you want for future references, as long as you make sure you have that one additional stitch for your pattern in the middle. So now I'm going to close my little book here and take my color A, and it'd be wise to like find the center string if you're using this particular brand of yarn. If not, I still say find the center string. You'd be a lot easier off that way. That's just my preference. And oops, yarn stash, it's in the way. What I'm going to do is scoot up here, and I am going to make a slip knot. And just in case you guys wonder, I am making this tutorial with the assumption that you know how to crochet already. If not, then I suggest going back on the channel and looking at prior videos so that you can get a good grasp on these concepts that I'm talking about today. So now what I'm going to do is chain 80 plus 3, and that's going to give us our 81 stitches. I'll show you how. A little tip when chaining is put a stitch marker between every few kind of chains. That helps me keep count. So say like I was not keeping count there. Say, okay, I did my slip knot and I chained 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Because I'm doing increments of 20, I would be putting a stitch marker on every 20th chain across my foundation chain. And that just helps me to keep count. And also it kind of helps with like ripping back. But yeah, so it's gonna pull out more yarn here, and I'm gonna keep chaining until I get to 80. Alright, crafty, so now I have my 80 chains. It looks like it came up on that fast. And what I'm going to do now is chain an additional 3. So 1, 2, 3. And when I yarn over and go into the 4th stitch of my 4th stitch from my hook and make my double crochet, that gives me an additional stitch here, and therefore I have 81 stitches. And now I know I'm good to go on and do double crochets across this row. And typically when I do this pattern, I like to do anywhere from 8 to 10 rows for the smaller sizes. And of course, as the blanket gets bigger, if you're doing something with like a chain of 300, I recommend doing 18 rows of just double crochets all the way across. And I'll meet you back when I get there. So I'm going to do 10 rows. Okay, crafty, so I have done my 10 rows of double crochets, and now what I'm going to do is chain 3. So 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to spread out my little blanket here. Let's move that aside just a wee bit. And I know that I have technically 81 stitches going across, so what I'm going to do, since I did that chain of 3, I'm going to go over 39 more stitches, and then I'm going to be changing color. So I'll meet you guys back when I get those 39 stitches. Alright, so I am coming up on this 39th stitch. Move my yarn here. And I'm only going to complete it halfway because I'll be changing color. So just work it as normal, but you leave those 2 loops on your hook. And you get your color B. For me, it's this cherry red. And you hook it on. You can either do this with a slip knot, or if you're in good faith, just leave a good tail on there and loop it on there. And pull it through, just like that. Now, at this point, you're going to be determining your good side versus your bad side. And I'm determining right now that this is my uglier side. Because to me, there's always a side that looks better than the other. And what I'm going to do is put my current color towards the front and my old color towards the back. I'm not going to cut my yarn this time, just because I don't want that extra string to sew in later. And I'm going to go ahead and make half of a double crochet, and then I'm going to pick up my color A again and change it back to that color. Then you can move that color B right on back to the back and continue this row in your color A with double crochet. Okay, so crafties, I have finished off that row, which is technically row 11. So what I'm going to do now is, well, I've already chained my 3 and I'm turned my work, and now I'm ready to continue on with row 12. And what that will consist of, let me get my yarn out of my dish. And what that consists of is me doing 38 stitches on this side of the red stitch and 38 stitches on this side. So basically what happens as you go up is that this little color B will grow in like an odd number of stitches the wider that you make your design inside. And so consequently, on either side you're going to have fewer and fewer stitches. Now you don't want to expand your color B out to the very edges of your project like you saw in my preview picture. Everything was pretty much perfectly centered in the blanket, and that's really what you want. So determine your stopping point as you continue on with this project. What I'm going to do is start making those 38 stitches. So there's 2. Oops. There's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, Alright, so I have come to my 38th stitch, and I'm only going to do half of it because I am color changing again. So I'm going to reach over here and grab my color B. And I'm going to connect my color. Just like that. Making sure my old color is at the back and the tail of my new color is to the front. And again, I do this in, I do color changing in another tutorial. So go back and watch that one to understand why I do that, if you don't get that concept already. And I'm going to make 1 red double crochet. I'm going to make another in the next stitch. And I'm going to make my 3rd and final one in the next stitch. I'm only going to do half of that red stitch. Make sure my red tail is going back. Cut my color B and reconnect my color A. Okay. And now I can do the rest of this row in my color A. So I'm going to do that, and I'll meet you back when I get to the beginning of the next row. Alright, so I finished off row 11 and row 12, and I chained up my 3 so that I may start working row 13. So like I said earlier, basically the way this pattern works is that you keep increasing the amount of color B stitches by 2 every row, and it grows in odd numbers. So the first row was 1, this row is 3, this row 13 is going to be 5 stitches that will be in my color B. So I'm going to do that on camera. Alright, now I have gotten to my stitch before I change my color, so I'm going to grab up my color B, just connect it, and if you're ever nervous about these strings wiggling like loose, you could use fray check to keep them tacked down to your satisfaction. Alright, so now I am going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3, and pull up my yarn. I'm going to put a stitch marker in here, just like so, and I'm going to turn this on the right side and spread it out. And what you guys are going to do is continue to increase this pattern until you are ready to round it off, and I will meet you back then. Okay, crafties, so here I have done 28 more rows since the last time we met. When I make these blankets, I like to have a good sound composition for the design, or basically I just want to make it look even on both sides. However, when this one worked up, I noticed that I had a couple more stitches on one side than I do the other,
but when you hold it up and look at it from a distance, it is not very noticeable at all. So that's no big deal to worry about once you're working on your blanket. So basically I wanted to stop for this size once I had 10 stitches on each side. So I have like 10 on one side right now, and I have maybe 11 or 12 on the other side, but it's fine. So now I'm going to show you guys how to like bring the heart shape up instead of continuing the expanse.
So like I said, I'm done expanding, and what I'm going to do now is look at my pattern. Now for this particular pattern and size of this pattern, I am going to continue to grow my heart upward for about 4 more rows. Now if you're doing a bigger size, you're more than welcome to do more rows. I would recommend it. But for, like I said, this size of 80 chains across, I'm going to just go up 4 more rows. So in doing that, I'm going to take out my stitch marker. And I'm going to insert my hook and turn my work to the back side. And I've also taken the liberty of snipping my strings, or weaving in my ends rather, just so I don't have to do it later. So I'm going to yarn over, and I'm going to double crochet in every stitch until I get to my color B. Also forgive any background noise. I'm not sure if you guys can hear it, but family is loud. Just a little bit. And keep going and keep going. And so as we were expanding, you would notice like 2 stitches before you got to your color B that you would change your color, but we are not expanding the heart anymore. So now what's going to happen is I'm actually going to work into the stitch like right next to where my color B begins, and I'm going to work half of that stitch as normal because I will be changing color again. And I'm going to grab my little end here and pull it out. And by the way, I'm still working on the first skein of both my color A and my color B for this size. So if you're looking to make like a small lap blanket or just a throw or something for a little kid, this is perfect. You may only need 2 of each color, but it's better to have more than what you need than not enough. Make sure this is long enough, and I'd say it's almost too long. Okay, now my color has been changed, and I'm going to continue double crocheting in color B until I get to basically the end of this design. am coming up on the last stitch of my color B. So I'm going to go ahead and insert my hook there and do half of the stitch, and I'm going to change my color back to color A. I'm popular today. And I'm going to finish out my row in color A. Yarn over and go on and do those last few stitches. And I am making that last stitch. Now I can go on and chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to turn my work. And so this starts to bring your heart shape up so that we can go into making the curvy top part of the heart shape. So you're going to do this for 3 more rows, and I'll meet you back then.
Okay, Crafty, so I have gone up on my blanket design those 4 extra rows, and now I'm going to start showing you guys how to come in and make the curve of the heart shape at the top. So basically, the whole purpose of me showing you guys to chain an uneven amount of chains is because this whole design is made on a center, and both the first row and this next row that we're about to start need to be on center, otherwise it will not work. So that extra stitch does actually come in handy.
Okay, Crafty, so what has happened is I have chained my 3 already, and before I begin this row, I'm going to say that you should have an odd number of your color B stitches. So in my case, I have 59 stitches, and in order to determine the center that I need, I would subtract 1 and divide by 2, which gives me 28 stitches on either side of this kind of center stitch that I'm going to have. So what I'm going to do is, in my color A, I am going to make my stitches as I normally would until I get to the edge of my design. You guys should be color changing masters by the end of this tutorial. Also, this is a time for your voice to be heard, so down in the comments below, let me know what kind of content that you would like to see in the future. I am dedicated to constantly pushing out content that I think you guys would enjoy, but I would like to also hear the opinions of my community. I like catering to you guys. It's fun. Make sure you hit like on this video and share it with the world. That would really help me out, like, a lot. And okay, I am at the edge of my design, and what I'm going to do now is actually yarn over and go into that next stitch with my color A, and I'm only going to make it halfway because I am going to be changing my color now. So you can do this one or two ways. You can make the string longer than you need it, like you kind of normally would during a color change, or you can snip it in the middle. I don't want all those strings to sew in, so I am going to make my string long. It's just personal preference. and move my other strings out of the way. Kind of pull that down. I've got my working yarn here and my stubborn tail there. There we go. And now I'm ready to work. Yes. So for the next, I'm going to say 27 stitches. I'm going to make double crochets. Now I'm going to quickly change my color. Just move my stuff to the back. And I'm going to change my color to my color A. And I'm going to make my single double crochet in the next stitch. But not completely, because I need to change color again. Right back to that color. Right back to that color B. This part can get tricky if you like leave your strings continuous and you don't realize that you're not weaving them in, then you're going to end up having to cut it for this row. And it's going to be a hassle. Alright, now I can change my color. Making sure I'm working the right string. Alright, and now we're going to work the next 27 stitches in color B. Seven. Now I'm going to change my color again for the last time on this row. Tossing back those red strings. And 28. And now I'm going to finish my row with my color A.
Okay, so I have chained my 3 and now I'm going to turn my work. And what's going to happen now, on this side that I can show you, you can already pretty much see how it's going to curve in. And this center where we have this pink stitch, it's basically going to be an inverted version of where we started with the heart. So each row that you continue to decrease color B, color A increases in the middle by that odd number. So this row, there's going to be 3 pink stitches in the middle of my project, and so on and so on. And mind you, we're still going to be taking away from these outer edges like this one. So I'm going to insert my hook again and adjust my tension and yarn over, and I'm going to start creating my double crochets. Yeah, so a little fun fact about the first one of these that I designed and made, it took me a little over 3 months and it was over 22,000 stitches. I made it big enough for really a king size bed, but it was laid out over my queen size bed. It was done in black, red, and gold. The background of it being black, so my color A was black. You can imagine. You can imagine the hassle with that and this giant red heart in the middle of it, and that's actually where I get my yarn recommendations for the pattern, which I was not thinking about it when I first mentioned, but again, better to have too much than too little, especially if you used a different sized hook. You actually worked with the gauge, you might actually have a little less yarn than I do. Oops, and that is a half double. Also, if any of you guys actually use this pattern, I would love to see it. So feel free to send me pictures over on the Facebook page. That would be great. Tag me, because I'd love to see it. And so now you'll notice I'm stopping just 1 stitch shy of the middle stitch here. And what I'm going to do is change my color. So just like that. And actually starting this row, this is where I actually cut my red yarn. A little bit of tears.
because it looks bad on the correct side. If you like leave red, if that's the only color that you are weaving in as you go, it looks bad through the front side of your project, and you don't want that. So we're gonna make 3 stitches. That's the second one, and that is the third one. I'm not gonna complete it because, again, changing that color back. And continuing on with these red stitches until I am just 1 stitch shy of the end of the red. And now that I am here, I'm going to change back to my color A. And complete the row with it.
Okay, crafty, so I am back, and this is what I have as a whole blanket there. So basically in this next row, what I'm going to do is that indentation towards the top, I'm going to have 7 stitches going across there. So I'm going to bring it in just one more time to even it off, and then I am going to move on to the next row where I'll no longer be changing color.
Alright guys, so like I said, going to just go about working my color A stitches, bringing the top of the design in just a little bit more to give it the illusion of being rounded off. So I'm going to go ahead and work those. Just like that. And working on top of that first red stitch, but only halfway because I'm going to be changing my color one last time. Yay. Bring up my string. just like other rows, stopping just a stitch before, well, I guess actually 2 stitches before my color A, so that I can change it back to color A. Alright, now I can change my color back to color A. And I yarn over, insert my hook if it wants to stay in the stitch. And what I'm going to do is make 7 double crochets. And again, if the color B gets in your way like it likes to do for me, you are more than free to snip the yarn and move it to the side. Bring out more of that pink yarn. And now I'm going to change my color. Now I need to bring back my color B. And reattach it, just like that. And now we can continue to work this pattern. So some of you might be wondering why I do not cut my color A, like ever, throughout this pattern. To me, it just has a lot to do with the functionality of it, really. after a few washes, if you were to cut the pink, I'm sorry, if you were to cut your color A, it would eventually unravel, I feel, just through normal wear and tear. And I feel that not cutting that main color just upholds the structural integrity of your project. Especially if you're going to be gifting these to somebody. You don't want it to fall apart on them in the wash, because most people just throw these crochet things in the washing machine. They don't take particularly special care of them, I've noticed over the years. So that's just one of those housekeeping rules that I like to follow. Alright, and now I am going to change back to color A. Okay, crafty. So as you saw on the last slide, I already chained my 3 and I'm ready to move on to the next row. Your pattern might not look rounded off to you at this point, but once you're a few rows into this next step, you're going to be good to go. And what I'm going to do now is turn my work. I'm also going to make sure I cut my color B. I no longer need it. And basically the pattern for this row is to chain 3, which I already have done, and you're going to make 1 double crochet in each stitch across. Now because we did 10 rows at the bottom at the beginning of this tutorial, I'm only going to do 8 rows at the top, just to give it that certain look, as though it were centered. It'll look completely right by the time I'm done. So I'm going to take time to do that, and I'll meet you guys back when I have finished my blanket. Okay, crafties, it brings us to the end of this video. To finish the blanket off, after I did my 8th row of double crochets, I simply went around it with a single crochet border, and that allows for more decorative border to be put in without interrupting the design. So that being said, thank you for making it to this point, and if you enjoyed this tutorial, let me know by hitting the thumbs up button. Likewise, consider subscribing so that you never miss out on future tutorials like this one. Also, let me know in the comments below whether or not you prefer these tutorials to be made in like one whole video or in like a crochet along format. I'd definitely be interested in knowing that. And until next time, happy making!